Today you're going to learn how to draw cats in a simple way from a reference photo step by step. The things you're going to need include a reference photo, something to draw on, a sketchbook, a paper. You're going to need a pencil, an eraser, and some kind of pen, whether that's a felt marker, a ballpoint pen. You can use a book or a magazine and some tracing paper to get our preliminary shapes down. Or you can bring a reference photo in from a free photo reference site like Pixabay or Unsplash directly into Canva, where you can trace on top of that, and I'll show you how to do that as well. If you chose a book or printed a photo, you can use tracing paper or printer paper or anything you can see through to the actual photo. If you're doing this on a tablet or a computer or your phone, then I'll show you how to import the picture from Pixabay to Canva, and we'll trace on top of that. If you're doing this on a PC, I would suggest having some kind of pen device attached, because it might be a little wonky with a mouse, but you could probably still get away with it. Also, just a quick disclaimer before we start. Just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy. It's still going to require practice. With the method I'm about to show you, we're not aiming for photorealism. We're aiming to have an accurate, somewhat proportional sketch that actually looks like a cat. So if you're struggling getting any likenesses to anything in your drawings, then this is going to help a lot. And when I say it's not easy and you might not be good at it right away, I also speak for myself. If you have followed me up until now, you know that I'm just starting my art journey again in my late 30s. And I recently discovered this pathway to drawing a few days ago. And I actually had to record this twice. Because the first time, well, I'll show you at the end what the first take came out to be. Okay, so we're going to go to Pixabay. And we're going to search for cat or cat sitting or something along those lines. For the purposes of this video, I'm looking for a cat with the full body. So I see this little guy over here in the corner. He's pretty cute. So to bring this into Canva, isn't it wonderful? We have this edit image that we can click on, and it's going to import it to Canva for us. It's very nice of them. Saves us the trouble. If you don't have a Canva account, that's free and you can set one up very easily. Okay, so what we want to do once we're in Canva, we want to change the transparency of our image, bring it down a bit, just to simulate having the tracing paper on top, as if we were having a physical photo in front of us. Then we go into our tools, and we select that marker looking thing with the finer pen on top. I just changed the color to purple because I like purple. So what we want to do with this image is get the general shapes in. See, I'm just tracing around the head here and defining his little chin a little bit. And we just want to set the center of the face and the line on top of the eyes just so we can place them later. I didn't like that line, so I did it again. And these two lines indicate the angle of his head, like the shape of his head a little more, and where the eyes are going to start and stop. And after that, we trace a little box around the eye to show where the eye goes. And a little snoot. And his little muzzle. Doesn't have to be perfect, we're just setting guidelines right now. He's going to look a bit funny. And we keep going around the ears. Just indicating the fur direction a little bit. We get the nice big curve on his back, down to his tail. And all the way around to his little toe beans. And the back of his leg. That back foot can be a little bit tricky because it's not very well defined. It's surrounded by his fluffiness, so we're just making a general shape here inferred from where the fur is sticking out. And here I'm just putting in some general fur direction, just so later when we add in his stripes, we know which way to put them, and it's going to look more believable. Just indicating more floof. And you know, nothing is final. If you don't like something, you can go back and change it, because this stage is probably the most important. It really sets where you're going to be drawing your shapes in. So if something's wrong and you don't like it, just fix it, because after that it's hard to come back from. Okay, so that's our we have our sketch. So now we're going to draw this in our sketchbook. If you prefer, if you have a tablet to keep going and draw it in a digital art program, I would recommend opening a separate canvas on the side and not just tracing over directly the photo, because we're going to draw those shapes from scratch. Getting those shapes was just to give us a starting point, so it's not as overwhelming as looking at the entire kitten and not knowing where to start. Okay, so now we're in our sketchbook, and I've got a pencil, an eraser, and a felt tip pen, which we'll use later. So here we go. We start by outlining the head. The head is the easiest place to start because it gives your anchor point. Just make sure you put it somewhere on the page where you have enough space for the rest of his body. Then you want to mark down that center line. And ideally, your first sketch is going to be a lot lighter than mine. The only reason I'm doing this so dark is so the camera can pick it up, and you're not looking at the page wondering what's going on. I'm drawing his ears, and I noticed here that I made his ear stick out a little bit too much. Again, if there's anything you're unsure of at this point, there's always time to fix it. Anytime I'm pointing at my phone with the pencil, I am essentially measuring distances to decide where I'm going to be putting my lines, and also to double check that everything is in proportion. As I was starting to put in his eye here, I was noticing that it was a little too far out to the side, so I corrected that line. Nothing's perfect, ever, let alone the first time. Okay, so if you notice, the size of his head is pretty much the size that goes down to his little kitty elbow there. So he's pretty much broken down into thirds. Most babies are. When it comes to kittens, and even human babies, are 1/3 head, 1/3 body, 1/3 leg. So here I'm just checking with this line. His chest sticks out just about as far as his ear goes, so that's what that line is. His little leg is about the same. The two bends in his neck are at about the same spot, so I was just checking against that. And I was starting to add in his arm. And that little point where his belly meets his elbow is at about the same spot as the left eye. So I just made that relationship there. Again, any line you don't like at this point, redo it, because it's not going to get better once you try to put the ink on top. So I'm checking his arm. Comes up to about the same point as the toe on his back foot. The curve in his leg juts out from the side of his ear just a little bit. Gotta draw in the floor at this point, because keeping the line straight at the angle I was drawing was a bit tricky. Now his foot's a bit tricky here, because like I said when we were making that first sketch, there's a lot of fluff in there. So these lines, they're not going to be there at the end. It's just to give us a general indication of where the foot begins and ends. With those other parts in, his back more or less leads itself in. And with that, we have his tail. So this ends our preliminary outline. From here, you can keep adding more detail. I'm starting to fill in the eyes, and I try to do things in one place for the sake of this video, but I jump around a bit sometimes. So what I've done now is I've opened up the full reference image so that I can see the details better, so my sketch lines aren't in the way anymore. At this point, you can fill in as little or as much detail as you'd like. However, less tends to be more. Here I'm just making indications of his markings. I'm going to be doing quite a bit of mapping out of his stripes, but here we're solidifying those lines. The thing we really want to look out for when we're adding those stripes is the fur direction. Because if we add those stripes in the wrong direction, let's say the fur juts out diagonally, and you make the stripes stark straight, it's going to look very strange and your drawing will be less believable. And again, nothing is permanent at this point. Again, indicating for direction. And notice I'm not making super detailed strokes. This is basically scribbling. But it still looks like something, doesn't it? And with that, I'm done the basic sketch. There's enough information there for me to be comfortable, even though I didn't completely put in all those lines that I'm going to end up making. And here we go in with the pigment marker. I'm using a 0.01 fine tip. I start with the eyes. This part always makes me a little nervous because the first ones that I did, I tend to mess them up at the eyes. I either make them too big or make one of the lines too thick, and it ends up giving them a really weird expression. Even in this one, I noticed at the end, I made his left eye considerably smaller than the right one, but I left it alone. It took a lot of self-control. I left it alone because if I had tried to make it look bigger with more black lines, it would have just ruined it and made it look even weirder. As you can see, I'm staying true to the guidelines I put down. So even here in these final lines, I'm doing tiny scribbly motions or tiny little lines. There are a few places where we're going to want a stark straight line. The ears are a good example of that. However, there's an exception on the left ear. See, it's very white on the right side of his left ear there. So instead of drawing a line down, I'm just doing little strokes to indicate that that side is lighter. Seeing as this is a darker spot, I did do a straight line down, but I'm still going to add the little fuzz. Adding in his little chin with, again, those short lines, not just a straight line. You could also do straight lines if your aim was to be even more cartoony, but like I said, we were going for realistic or representational, so basically anything you want to do at this point is fair game. This was about when I started seeing that his left eye was a bit too small, but I left it alone. I didn't want to ruin it like I ruined the other one that I'm going to show you after. For this floof, I'm going a bit higher than my original reference line, mostly because I didn't draw in all the floof that I wanted to when I made that line in the first place. So that's something to keep in mind. And going too fast isn't your friend either. Just because those lines are down doesn't mean you can go faster, like I did here. And I made his tail too skinny. So I added more black at the bottom. Luckily his tail is pretty dark, and I can get away with saying it's either the black fur of his tail or the shadow at the bottom. I mean, I only have to justify it to myself, right? Here I'm marking a straight line down because this is a very dark area of the picture. He has a big black stripe going down his arm, and also it meets one on his body. So I'm going to be filling in a lot of dark areas in this space. And again, still taking into consideration the direction of the fur. Because this area was darker, I drew a line down and then drew his fluff out. Another reason you want to keep the fur direction in mind is because as you're scribbling in those dark areas, and you should keep it as a scribble, because what the spaces between the dark lines do is infer the lighter fur. Infer the fur. With the spaces between the fur. It's really dark along his back, so all along his back I'm going to be putting darker lines. Again, keeping with the direction of the fur. I'm going to repeat it a bunch of times, I'm sorry, but it's really important. Even around his leg is really dark. Those shadows are what define the shape. Without that shadow there to guide us, we wouldn't know that's where his leg was. This is where we get to a really fluffy point. So I'm not going to do many hard lines around his foot. And basically now I just keep going, adding the dark spaces until I'm happy with what I see. But it's really easy to overdo it, so if you start feeling like you need to stop, you probably should. Just adding a few more indications of his chest fur. And reworking some markings around his face and his ears. Speaking of not knowing when to stop, I just kind of kept going on his leg. Once we're satisfied with what we've put down, we can take our eraser. After you wait for whatever ink you were using to dry, I've made that mistake, it smears everywhere. And we get rid of our pencil markings. And it makes them look a lot cleaner. And after the pencil's gone, if you see any spots that you forgot because maybe the pencil markings were too dark, you can add them in. And I always love saving the whiskers for last. That's one of the things I tend to do when I'm drawing animals, is once I add in the whiskers, I can't go back. It's done. It prevents me from overworking things. Now, there were some spots where I could have kept adding darker fur, but it was bordering on the edge of mid-tone, and I didn't want to do any mid-tones with this black pen. If you want to do that, I suggest you either get an extremely fine tip pen, like a .005, and do some hatching, or you can use gray markers. I made this mistake in a previous drawing I did when I was trying to add in some mid-tones with the same pen I was using to add the lines and the dark, and it just turned into a chunky mess. And like I said, I had to draw them twice. Just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy. And as promised, here is... Oh, buddy, you have seen some things. It's like he had a bad day at work. He has seen things. Things have happened. He's not happy. I'll put them side by side for you so you can tell the difference. So yeah, that's how to draw cats, step by step, in a representational manner from a reference photo. Just a couple more tips on how to choose your reference photo. I try to avoid either subjects that are too white and washed out or too black so that prevents you from seeing where things are. Like if you can't tell where the legs are or where the back leg is or if the tail is curling around them or not, then I would recommend not using that if you're starting out because you don't know yet where those things are supposed to be. As you use this method more, you're gonna start having a sense for the anatomy of the animal that you're drawing without having to go into comprehensive anatomy studies. So if you give this a try, let me know. I'd love to hear about it in the comments, how it went. And how hard was it actually? Start now. You can do it.